And away we go. Episode 1385 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Tuesday, August 11th, 2026. The day after we had 2026 Washington Commanders training camp had the first practice since left tackle Laremy Tunsil suffered a torn triceps during this past Saturday morning's practice. Life post the Tunsil injury truly began with Monday morning's practice. The episode of this podcast after a jarring development like the Tunsil injury is mostly for emotion. The second episode of the podcast after a jarring development like the Tunsil injury is mostly for analysis. And so now we begin to truly assess the situation. How exactly will this work with Brandon Coleman, at least for now, as the team's starting left tackle? Hello and welcome to this Tuesday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. Next segment, analysis of what Washington is losing in Laremy Tunsil being out for at least a significant portion of the 2026 regular season due to the torn triceps, and discussion of what the team has in Brandon Coleman off comments from head coach Dan Quinn and offensive coordinator David Blough. Look, nobody sane will tell you that going from Tunsil to Coleman isn't a step down. But remember, Coleman did an admirable job as the team's starting left tackle for most of its Renaissance 2024 season. He's now 2 seasons more mature. There's no reason why he can't again do an admirable job at left tackle. The following segment, conversation about a variety of topics off comments from Dan Quinn and David Blough, including an injury update on cornerback Trey Amos, whether Washington will/should play key players in its 2026 preseason opener, blunt comments from Quinn on the validity of the unofficial depth chart put out by Washington, telling comments from Blough on receiver Stefon Diggs, Blough saying that quarterback Jayden Daniels is, quote, as accurate as he's ever been, end quote, and Quinn highlighting Shy Tuttle when talking about Washington's nose tackles. And also on the show, I'll talk Baltimore Orioles. They lost for the 4th time in 5 games, a 9-5 loss at the Minnesota Twins on Monday night, as starting pitcher Dean Kramer, who the O's just traded to the Twins, was great against the O's. 1 run in 7 innings with 7 strikeouts versus 1 walk. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. You can reach me via writing a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. You can write about whatever you want, and I'll read what you write if you give the podcast a 5-star rating. Feedback on Laremy Tunsil suffering a torn triceps, especially from the standpoint of the terrible injury luck for Washington since the start of last regular season. From DC Sports on X, writes DC Sports, is there a substation in Ashburn? Only explanation. Thank you for that, DC Sports. From 70 Chip on X, writes 70 Chip, I think we seriously have to blame all those damn data centers in Ashburn just as bad as substations. Thank you for that, 70 Chip. From Commanders 2025 on X, writes Commanders 2025, blame the data centers. Thank you for that, Commanders 2025. I am noticing a trend here. These posts on X, of course, in reference to a theory that went viral. The theory being that the San Francisco 49ers being hammered by injury in recent seasons was due in large part to an electrical substation near the Niners training facility and stadium, SAP Performance Facility and Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. I read to you from a piece by Niners insider Nick Wagner of ESPN. The piece came out on ESPN.com this past January 21st. Quote, the theory that has been making the rounds on the internet and has crept its way into the 49ers locker room. Receiver Kendrick Bourne alluded to it after tight end George Kittle tore his right Achilles in the playoff game against Philadelphia. Suggests the Niners' lengthy injury list over the past decade plus can be attributed in part to excessive exposure to electromotive force, EMF. The 49ers have trained in Santa Clara since the late 1980s, with the substation coming in a few years later. The station, which is operated by Silicon Valley Power, expanded in 2014 in conjunction with the opening of Levi Stadium. The theory has been shot down by various scientists and medical professionals. Still, the 49ers' injury issues over the past decade or so are robust enough to take nothing off the table. According to Over the Cap, the 49ers had 20 players on a reserve list this season, accounting for more than $95 million in adjusted annual value on their contracts, the highest amount in the league by nearly $20 million over second place Arizona, end quote. Hey, man, who knows? There are a ton of data centers in Ashburn, Virginia, site of the Washington Commanders team facility. In fact, Ashburn in the tech world is known as Data Center Valley. Those of you listening who are in the tech world, I'm sure already know that, but Ashburn is known as Data Center Alley. VirginiaMercury.com. It, this past July 6th, came out with a piece headline, quote, "How Virginia Became the World's Data Center Capital and How It's Going," end quote. I am no scientist. I am no doctor, but we're in big trouble if there is something to this idea of data centers being bad for the health of NFL players. Here's another theory from Sean Casey on X. Right, Sean, change the name back and reverse the curse. Thank you for that, Sean. Hey, if you are a Washington Commanders fan, check out bgobsession.com, an outstanding site for discussion about the team, especially as training camp is ongoing. BG Obsession, or BGO, has been going strong since 2009. BG Obsession offers great contests, game day chats, and camaraderie. No politics, just football. Both old school and new school fans are welcome. By the way, the 2026 BGO NFL Pick'em contest is here. Details in the Sons of Washington forum on bgobsession.com. Visit and join BGO at bgobsession.com and tell bgobsession.com that Al Galdi sent you. bgobsession.com, home to your burgundy and gold obsession. Well, maybe, hopefully, the Washington Commanders will be just fine with left tackle Laremy Tunsil out due to a torn triceps. From Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN on Monday morning in a post on X, quote, "On Brandon Coleman's first snap at LT, Jayden Daniels with a dime to De'Ami Brown for a long TD over Mikey Sainristil," end quote. It was nice to read that. But yeah, it is now official. Laremy Tunsil, during this past Saturday morning's training camp practice, suffered a torn triceps. He will undergo surgery, and he is expected to miss most, if not all, of the 2026 season. Devastating news. Head coach Dan Quinn did a pre-practice press conference on Monday morning. This was how the press conference started, and then we'll hear a follow-up back and forth between John Keim and Quinn.
Let's get rocking. First, let's start on an update on Laremy. And so he did injure his tricep. He is going to get surgery. And it's always tough to talk about a player missing time, and especially a great player like LT. Not only is he an unbelievable player, like he is a absolutely fantastic teammate, and he'll be missed. And we can't wait to get him back. When these tough scenarios come up, it does provide some opportunities, and Brandon Coleman will shift back out to left tackle. He's played a lot of winning football at left tackle here, and we know that he's ready for it. He's put in an excellent offseason, and the team is very confident in him. So all that said, ready to get rolling with you guys.
How hard is it to quantify what losing Tunsil means?
Yeah, I think it's the on-field portion speaks for itself. This is a great player. The off-field portion is also significant, and just because of his connection, with his teammates and how he interacts with them. So, like I said, on and off the field, this is significant for us.
On the field, what is it that you lose the most with him?
I think obviously just the skill and pass protection of where he's at. He's in fantastic shape. He is really on the top of his game right now. So both in the run and pass, this is an equally strong player, and so it's a big deal. When it's game on, you run behind a player like that, in the running game and in pass protection, you didn't get a lot of help, and that's a good thing.
Yes, it is, but Laremy Tunsil having suffered a torn triceps is a very bad thing. Washington this past March 13th announced having signed Tunsil to a contract extension. The extension per overthecap.com and spottrack.com is a 2-year, $60.2 million extension with $52.7 million fully guaranteed. Makes him the first offensive lineman in NFL history with an average annual value and AAV of at least $30 million. This off Tunsil having been the first offensive lineman in NFL history with an AAV of at least $20 million, and off Tunsil having been the first offensive lineman in NFL history with an AAV of at least $25 million. Tunsil was entering his age 32 season. The contract extension takes him through his age 34 season. He off being acquired via trade with the Houston Texans on March 15th, 2025, played in 14 of Washington's 17 games in the 2025 regular season, was out for the team's last 3 games due to an oblique injury, but likely would have played in some, if not all of those games had Washington been fighting to make the playoffs. Tunsil in the 2025 regular season registered these grades per Pro Football Focus, for which grades are on a scale of 0 to 100, and 60 is average. Overall grade of 84.7. Pass blocking grade of 88.9, as he, per PFF, allowed just 15 pressures and just 2 sacks over 490 pass blocking snaps. Run blocking grade of 75.3. Also, Tunsil in the 2025 regular season committed just 8 penalties, including just 5 accepted penalties. This was off him having had a major penalty problem that included Tunsil in the 2024 regular season committing an NFL worst 19 penalties, including an NFL worst 17 accepted penalties and an NFL worst 12 accepted false start penalties. Laremy Tunsil is an elite left tackle. He is Washington's best left tackle since Trent Williams. How possible is it that Tunsil could be back at some point in the 2026 regular season? We on Monday morning had this exchange between Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack and Dan Quinn.
Do you have any feel for if Laremy could actually return during the regular season?
Not until surgery and those types of things are done. And so once that's completed, then you can kind of make assessments, but it would be way too premature to put a guess on that.
All right. Well, all the best to Laremy Tunsil. You know, we've been lamenting him suffering this torn triceps from the standpoints of the team and us as fans. But yeah, this must be crushing for him. Hopefully, he somehow is able to be back in, say, December. We heard Dan Quinn confirm that the team is going with Brandon Coleman as the starting left tackle, at least for now. But Washington is moving Coleman, who had been competing for the starting left guard job, but who for much of the 2024 season was the team's starting left tackle, to being the starting left tackle. Washington is not moving its starting right tackle, Josh Conerly Jr., to being the starting left tackle. Now, the Conerly possibility was interesting, but risky. It's not crazy to think that Washington should move Conerly to left tackle, given that the team took him as a left tackle out of the University of Oregon with the number 29 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. But moving Conerly to left tackle would disrupt his development at right tackle and would create disruption at 2 starting offensive tackle spots. And Dan Quinn certainly seems to view the situation this way. We on Monday morning had this exchange between Lake Lewis Jr. of 106.1 ESPN Richmond and Quinn.
Coach, you preached that versatility across the line, and you know, for Brandon to move back over to left tackle, was there any thoughts at all to maybe Josh, you know, who's had some experience in the past as well, maybe shuffling those guys?
Yeah, that's a fair question. It wasn't. We like the progression where Josh is. LT is going to be back, so we just thought let's keep the development of where Josh is, and not the shuffle of lots of shuffles.
Yeah, you never want too much shuffling with your offensive line. Dan Quinn, during his pre-practice press conference on Monday morning, also made it clear that the team is keeping Andrew Wiley in his role as the top backup offensive tackle, the top swing tackle. And Quinn on Monday morning did get asked about the possibility of acquiring a left tackle. The player who has come up the most in this regard is unrestricted free agent left tackle Taylor Decker. We on Monday morning had this exchange between columnist David Aldridge of The Athletic and Dan Quinn.
Dan, do you foresee bringing anyone in either from a depth standpoint or some other way?
Not today, but from like as we're looking at the roster and that from Adam's standpoint, that's not something that we discussed. After the injuries, honestly, just kind of the well-being of LT and see where he's at, and we'll know more post-surgery and timelines and all that good stuff.
And as I said with Brandon Coleman, the team is going with him as the starting left tackle, at least for now. Things could change depending on how he does, but him being the first man up in place of Laremy Tunsil, to me, makes total sense, in large part because we have seen Coleman play well at left tackle in the NFL. Washington took Brandon Coleman in the 3rd round of the 2024 NFL Draft out of TCU. He had the 2024 regular season played in 16 of Washington's 17 games, including 12 starts. He in the postseason for the 2024 season played in all 3 of Washington's games, including 3 starts, and he in all of these starts was the team's starting left tackle. Coleman for an elite 2024 Washington Commanders offense was the primary starting left tackle. Washington's record over the 2024 regular season and the postseason for the 2024 season with Brandon Coleman as the starting left tackle was 10-5. That's pretty good. 8-4 in the 2024 regular season and 2-1 in the postseason for the 2024 season. Now, then came Brandon Coleman's 2025 season. He was supposed to be Washington's starting left guard for last season, but after just 2 games in the regular season, he was a healthy inactive. Like, he wasn't just benched, he was made inactive. Coleman was a healthy inactive for each of 5 consecutive games. He last regular season ultimately made 5 starts, 2 starts at left guard over weeks 1 and 2, and then 3 starts at left tackle over weeks 16 through 18, as Laremy Tunsil, as mentioned, was inactive for each of the team's last 3 games due to an oblique injury. We on Monday morning had this exchange between David Aldridge and Dan Quinn.
How do you think Brandon's different now than he was the last time he was starting regularly?
I would say when you're a rookie, like, you're thrown into it and you go the ups and downs. I think he, like, some of the other guys, like, going through some adversity, into year 2, what does that look like? And you want to fight back, and that's the type of off season he had. So that's why I thought he's been off to a very good start inside at left guard, and so we'll make the move to switch him outside. But I'd say when you go through the tough things, you want to come out the other side stronger, harder, learn the lessons, and I feel like Brandon and a couple of guys are into that same space, and he just, maybe the resilience that you have to show and going through it sucks when you're doing it, but there is value on the other side of that.
Yeah, Brandon Coleman got humbled big time in being a healthy and active for each of 5 consecutive games last regular season. Massive opportunity for him now in being the first man up in place of Laremy Tunsil. We on Monday morning had this exchange between Commanders insider Nikki Javala of The Athletic and Dan Quinn.
Going back to Coleman, I know he obviously played a good bit at left tackle, but from shifting inside to outside, what sort of transition is that like for a lineman?
The difference is it's the angles of the sets, and so sometimes just muscle memory of one thing to go. Like, one of Brandon's key attributes is the athleticism, so just getting more depth off the ball into his sets, that'll be the biggest adjustment. The fact that he has thousands of reps doing it, I'm certain he'll get back into that space. And like I said, we have played a lot of winning football with Brandon at left. I think he's maybe over 20 games for sure over the last 2 years.
Okay, as for other aspects of Washington's starting offensive line, so Brandon Coleman being moved back to left tackle presumably means that the competition for the starting left guard job is over, with Chris Paul winning the competition by default. Although he was the team's starting left guard for most of last regular season, Paul in the 2025 regular season supplanted Brandon Coleman as Washington's #1 left guard and started each of the team's final 15 games. In fact, Paul, over those 15 games, played on 100% of the team's offensive snaps. And remember, we have the uncertainty at center with the man who is the favorite to be Washington's starting center, Nick Allegretti, out due to a calf strain. We on Monday morning had this exchange between Mitch Tischler of Monumental Sports Network and Dan Quinn.
Losing Laremy is obviously its own difficulties, but it kind of affects the rest of the line with Chris Paul now having a new center next to him who's obviously not practicing as much, a new left tackle over there. How much pressure does that put on a guy like that?
I would say, yeah, they have Chris and Laremy have a good relationship. They gained a lot of reps together, and so there's no hidden victory of early. There's none of that. That's good, but what it will provide, these guys spend a lot of time together in meetings. So Brandon and Chris have also been together. Same with Nick and Julian. These guys didn't just meet each other, a few moments ago. So that's not the same as the game, and so those reps will be important. Nick will likely miss this block, and we'll get a chance to get him back after the Miami block. And that battle at the center will be ongoing for a couple weeks after that. But we have a lot of faith in Chris, certainly at the guard spot. And so it'll be important for him and Brandon to just get more time together. And I've got a lot of confidence they'll be able to do that.
All right, offensive coordinator David Blough, he did a post-practice press conference on Monday morning. This was Blough during the presser on Laremy Tunsil having suffered torn triceps, and then you'll hear a follow-up exchange between John Keim and Blough.
Sure. I'm just incredibly bummed for him, first and foremost. He's been everything that we've asked over the last really year and a half, and when you lose a player like that, man, it's hard. But DQ ourselves as offense, like we believe in the next man up, and we're going to just keep plugging away. And so there will be things that have to change, but we have all the trust in the world in Brandon, and he's played really well at left tackle over the last few years, and are excited to feature some of the things he does well too. And so, excited about the opportunity for him while also, hurting for Laremy.
What are some of those things that you feel like you can do with Brandon, but also what kind of growth have you seen in him over at tackle, even last year?
Sure. You immediately, like when you watch the tape, oftentimes there's somebody jumping out from the offensive line, chasing a football, running, and his speed, athleticism just flashes every time you turn our film on. And then I think, like, you've seen a young man grow here, right? From having to play all those starts his rookie year into different experiences last year, and us sharing, with him that he was going to be the left tackle, and him lighting up, like eager for the opportunity to go after this thing. I think he has demonstrated everything that we're looking for to protect that side for us.
And so you wonder, how does Laremy Tunsil, having suffered a torn triceps, affect Jayden Daniels? To what extent is the QB1 impacted by the LT1 potentially being out for the entirety of the 2026 season? Well, Daniels, in his all-time great 2024 rookie season, did thrive with Brandon Coleman at left tackle, but this was NFL analyst Kevin Clark of ESPN on ESPN's Get Up on Monday morning.
I just look at this offense, and I see Jayden Daniels having to go into Superman mode. And if you're saying there's injuries on the offensive line, I talked to Jayden Daniels on Saturday, and I said, who's the most underrated guy on this team? And he said, it's a unit. It's the offensive line. And he's talked about Laremy Tunsil. And he waxed poetic about how important Laremy Tunsil is, his place in this league, all of that stuff. And then a couple hours later, we find out he might be out for the season. This is massive. It cannot be overstated. And it's the kind of thing, frankly, I thought the Commanders were going to be sneaky good this year. In that division, where basically everybody's got a case to be maybe at least okay when you consider the Giants, this puts them closer to the Giants than it does the Eagles and the Cowboys. I just look at this offense, and I see Jayden Daniels having to go into Superman mode. And if you're saying there's injuries on the offensive line, I talked to Jayden Daniels on Saturday, and I said, who's the most underrated guy on this team? And he said, it's a unit. It's the offensive line. And he's talked about Laremy Tunsil. And he waxed poetic about how important Laremy Tunsil is, his place in this league, all of that stuff. And then a couple hours later, we find out he might be out for the season. This is massive. It cannot be overstated.
It is a huge deal, Laremy Tunsil potentially being out for the season. There's no doubt about that. But this injury doesn't need to ruin Washington's season. Like, if general manager Adam Peters has done his job properly, if head coach Dan Quinn has done his job properly, if offensive coordinator David Blough has done his job properly, then this team can overcome this injury. As bad of a hit as this Laremy Tunsil injury is, this injury doesn't have to ruin Washington's 2026 season. Well, Washington very much needs Brandon Coleman to step up, and if you need to step up your wardrobe, like Brandon Coleman needs to step up, check out Quince. So go to quince.com/Galdi. Quince is all about fewer, better pieces. Quince's clothes are made with premium materials built to last and designed to become the ones that you reach for day after day. I've been telling you about my sand dune colored cotton chino drawstring shorts from Quince. Clothes from Quince become your go-to items, like a go-to receiver. Quince specializes in everyday staples that work harder, like Quince's ultra-soft organic cotton tees and premium Mongolian cashmere sweaters. So they're versatile, timeless, and transition seamlessly from a casual workday to dinner out. If you're still hanging on to the same worn-out basics, Quince makes it easy to upgrade. Quince has premium denim and tailored chinos from just $60 with the kind of perfect fit, structure, and high-quality fabrics you'd expect from a luxury designer brand. Upgrade your everyday. Download the Quince app for app-exclusive offers or go to quince.com/Galdi. Get free shipping on your order and 365-day returns, now available in Canada and the UK too. That's QUINCE.com/Galdi. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Galdi. More now from 2026 Washington Commanders training camp off Monday morning's practice. So left tackle Laremy Tunsil suffering a torn triceps during Saturday morning's practice was not the only injury concern coming out of that practice. Quarterback Trey Amos, he during Saturday morning's practice went inside the team facility. We were not sure why. Now we know. During head coach Dan Quinn's pre-practice press conference on Monday morning had this exchange between Commanders insider Nikki Javala of The Athletic and Quinn.
Trey Amos left practice early the other day. Any update on what's going on with him?
Yeah, it was actually on the deep ball that he and Terry, it was like, deep ball down the field on the left sideline. And so kind of came down awkwardly on the ankle. So just kind of holding him out, got sore, and I'll have a better update for you in a day or two.
All right, so an ankle ailment for Trey Amos. Not good. Amos was on the active/physically unable to perform list from July 25th until just this past Friday morning, August 7th, as he was dealing with soft tissue soreness off the fractured fibula that he suffered in Washington's 44-22 loss to the Detroit Lions at Northwest Stadium this past November 9th. Amos is having a hard time staying healthy. Hopefully this ankle issue isn't anything serious. So Washington is hosting the Miami Dolphins for a joint practice this Wednesday morning at 10:30, and then is hosting the Dolphins for a preseason game this Friday night at 7. Does Laremy Tunsil, having suffered a torn triceps, alter anything in terms of the plan for who plays and for how much this Friday night? We on Monday morning had this exchange between Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack and Dan Quinn.
Dan, I know you guys are going to have conversations about preseason games and things like that. For you, at least, does the Laremy situation change your view about how much you want to use guys in preseason?
No, they're hard, like all of them are, when you get a guy banged up. But that'll be something that Adam and I will kind of go through with the staff, probably into tomorrow night, and then we'll get into what game one looks like. The joint practices help, Ben, in terms of how you want to feature guys. But they're also, valuable in lots of ways for the games too and reps. So we'll try to be as strategic as we can. But yeah, all those things, cross our mind.
I would be surprised if many key Washington players play on Friday night, especially with the joint practice just 2 days earlier. These joint practices have become more important than the preseason games. And know this, Washington, for its 2025 preseason opener, played very few key players. So Washington began its 2025 preseason with a 48-18 loss at the New England Patriots last August 8th. Boy, did that final score prove to be telling given what happened with each team last season. But Washington, shortly before that game, announced that 30 players did not dress for the game. Now, Washington last preseason was an older team coming off a great 2024 season and having the same offensive and defensive coordinators as the team had in the 2024 season. Washington this preseason is a younger team coming off a terrible 2025 season and having new offensive and defensive coordinators. So who knows? Maybe we do see a lot of key players play this Friday night, but my money would be on the overwhelming majority of key guys not playing this Friday night. We on Monday morning had this exchange between Commanders insider Candy Waller of Bowie TV Sports and Dan Quinn.
I'm going back to the point of, preseason, guys, big week this week, preseason game, joint practices. Have you had a chance to talk to the other head coach about practice and what you all want to work on?
Yes, I have talked to Coach Hafley, and kind of the way that you break it down, Candy, is head coach to head coach. These are the things we want to get accomplished. Set the guidelines, and as the home team, this is what we want to hit, this is where we'll go, and I give that to him. And then the coordinators also balance one another up to make sure looks, plays, so we can throw a great practice together. So yeah, I have visited with Jeff. When you decide to do those, early in the the off season, we're excited to have those guys up here. We really are. We're going to throw a great practice on Wednesday.
Yeah, the Dolphins this past January 19th announced having hired Jeff Hafley as head coach. He spent the last 2 seasons as the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator. And with Washington having its 2026 preseason opener this week, the Commanders on Monday morning released their first unofficial depth chart of the 2026 preseason. These unofficial depth charts put out by NFL teams in preseasons are so unofficial, okay, or very unofficial. The depth charts often aren't even put together by coaches. The depth charts often are put together by media relations people. But Washington's first unofficial depth chart of the 2026 preseason did not feature any surprises, in case you're curious. So something that did stand out was that Luke McCaffrey was listed as one of 3 first-string receivers, with the other 2 being, of course, Terry McLaurin and Stefon Diggs. Is Luke McCaffrey the WR3? Well, not so fast. We on Monday morning had this exchange with Dan Quinn.
I know wide receiver is a position that you guys will cycle through a lot during the regular season, but with the unofficial depth chart dropping, Luke McCaffrey got that 3rd spot right now. What have you seen from him this camp that made you comfortable doing that at this point?
Yeah, I would say the unofficial depth chart is like as valuable as like preseason rankings. Okay, so so strong. But what I can comment on is the intentional work by Luke in a number of areas. He really kind of came on as a knack as a kick returner last year, so that was kind of speaks to his competitive nature. He's improved releases off the line of scrimmage, the route, techniques, and so just seeing him, more time on task and like year 3 at the position, it's easy to see his ascension going up. He's versatile. He plays both in the slot and outside. With the addition, obviously of Steph coming here too, how do we maneuver and put guys in different spots? But there's a number of guys at the position that are really leveling up. It's nice to see Jalen Lane going into year 2 and just elevate the game. And so it's a cool thing to see.
Hey, man, it would be awesome to see Luke McCaffrey have a major step forward season in what'll be his 3rd NFL season. Washington took McCaffrey in the 3rd round of the 2024 NFL draft at a Rice. But as Dan Quinn said, quote, the unofficial depth chart is as valuable as preseason rankings, end quote. Well put. Some notable items from offensive coordinator David Blough during his post-practice press conference on Monday morning. So Laremy Tunsil suffering a torn triceps has taken away from what otherwise would still be the number 1 story at 2026 Washington Commanders training camp. Stefon Diggs, remember him? The team this past Friday morning announced having signed unrestricted free agent receiver Stefon Diggs. We on Monday morning had this exchange between Ben Standig and David Blough.
Hey, David, good to see you. Obviously one thing you did get was Stefon Diggs. Obviously, I'm sure you like having that addition, but what does that do for you in terms of the playbook? Now we have maybe one guy versus before you were looking at maybe some combination of a few guys to sort of do the same job.
Sure, I think Stefon adds an element of experience, savvy, understanding timing, leverage. He's played a lot of meaningful football, a lot of yards, and I think through having him for 3 practices, you feel his leadership too. You feel him bringing the guys together, challenging everybody to keep pushing forward, and he really, in just a couple days, you guys have seen 4 catches the other day. He had at least 2 or 3 today. The ball finds him because he finds space.
So David Blough on Stefon Diggs, quote, the ball finds him because he finds space, end quote. Yes, he does. Diggs for the 2025 regular season was tied for number 10 in the NFL in receiving first downs, 51. He is a chains mover. This, of course, is David Blough's first training camp as an offensive coordinator. We on Monday morning had this back and forth between Commanders insider Tashawn Reed of the Washington Post and David Blough.
David, through the first couple weeks of camp, what have you learned about just what goes into the process of installing an offense for the first time, with this being your first year as offense coordinator?
Man, that is a great question because, right, I have a lot of ideas and things that I would love to do, but this time is really finding out who we are. This is about finding out what we do well, what Jayden does well, what the skill guys do, what we can and can't do up front. And so there's times where you're like, man, I want to have a bunch of things in, but we got to pull back and work on the fundamentals and find out who this, Commanders offense is. So that has been a process. And, we've done a lot of call-up periods. So there's times where you walk out of a practice, you're thinking you're going to get through everything on the sheet, and you don't. So you go back to it, or do you keep pushing ahead? And so those are the things that I've navigated over the last, 10, 11 practices. So a lot of lessons, but it's been really good.
And obviously it's an adjustment for all the players, but for Jayden specifically, there's been a lot more under center work for him, and that changes a lot from footwork to timing, et cetera. How has he handled that so far? And as a former quarterback, like, how much goes into making that kind of a switch? I don't know if you had to during your career, but going from mostly shotgun to a mix of both.
Sure. He hasn't missed a beat. We track everything. We've tracked every throw he's made over the last 3 years. So we have metrics to measure all of those statistics. And he's as accurate as he's ever been. He's as completed as many passes as he ever has. And it's just a testament to asking him to do something different and him wanting to grow and evolve. And that's what this is all about for our whole group. Like, the version you see here won't be the same version of this offense you see next year, and into, everywhere you go, and we just will continue to evolve. So I'm proud of him, the work he's put into it up until this point, and he hasn't missed a beat.
David Blough on the QB1, Jayden Daniels, quote, "He's as accurate as he's ever been," end quote. We on last Wednesday's show, episode 1381, discussed Dan Quinn during his pre-practice press conference last Tuesday morning, August 4th, raving about the accuracy of Daniels. And we on Monday morning had David Blough praising Daniels' accuracy. Let's talk Washington defensive front. Washington now in presumably going with a 3-4 base defense is differentiating its defensive linemen via 3 categories: defensive tackles, defensive ends, and outside linebackers. It is from the defensive tackles that you get those who would be the team's primary players at nose tackle in a 3-4 base look. Washington lists the following players as defensive tackles: Daron Payne, Javon Kinlaw, Tim Settle, Johnny Newton, Shy Tuttle, Ricky Barber, and Jeffrey Emba. Washington this past Saturday morning announced having placed defensive tackle DJ Davidson on the reserve/retired list. We on Monday morning had this exchange between Ben Standig and Dan Quinn.
On the defensive line, Tim Settle looks like he's been kind of used a lot as a nose tackle. What do you think of the depth there? Obviously, one guy just retired. What do you think of that position? Do any of the other guys that were here last year possibly take some work there as well?
Inside, yeah, we like the strength that Tim has, the squareness that he plays with. The other player that's jumped out to me is Shy Tuttle. He's an experienced inside player, Ben, so I like the mix of the guys into that spot. Johnny quickness, Daron quickness, more on the edge, but those big square guys inside. Shy's been one that I felt his presence, especially on the padded days.
Interesting to hear Dan Quinn make it a point to mention Shy Tuttle. Washington likes Tuttle. The team this past March 9th announced having signed Tuttle to a contract extension. He had been set to be an unrestricted free agent in the 2026 offseason. Is entering his age 31 season. Washington acquired him via claiming him off waivers from the Tennessee Titans this past December 22nd. Washington lists the following players as outside linebackers: Adafe Owe, K'Lavon Chason, Joshua Josephs, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Joshua Josephs appears to be having a good training camp. Washington took him in the 5th round of the 2026 NFL Draft out of the University of Tennessee. We on Monday morning had this exchange between Commanders insider Donna Hopkins of Pro Football Plus and Dan Quinn.
Hey, Coach, staying with the defense, what have you seen from Joshua Joseph throughout camp so far?
Yeah, I thought he's on the right trajectory. I feel his length as a pass rusher. How does that come to life? Long arm. I gained separation on offensive tackle. He's got a nice natural bend to him. So those are 2 things that you want. And so seeing that come to life, he's gaining more experience going against different guys. So I like the battles that I see with him and the other guys. So I think he's off to a good start.
Well, Joshua Josephs, another one of these super athletic Washington draftees. Joseph scored an 8.56 out of a possible 10 in Kentley Platty's relative athletic score metric, ranking number 327 out of 2,257 defensive end prospects from 1987 through 2026. And we heard Dan Quinn mention the length of Joshua Josephs. He at the 2026 NFL Scouting Combine measured as being 6'3" and 242 pounds, but having an arm length of 34 1/4 inches. And a kicker competition update: Jake Moody versus Drew Stevens. So Jake Moody, the incumbent, Drew Stevens, the undrafted rookie out of the University of Iowa. We on Monday's show, episode 1384, talked about Stevens being in the lead in the competition. Well, each guy struggled during Monday morning's practice. Now, the report reports on what each guy did varied, but I'll read to you some of what was on X on Monday morning. From Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN, quote, tough day for Jake Moody, just missed 4 of 6 in field goal session from 44, 49, 51, and 55 yards. Missed first wide left, then 2 of last 3 wide right. Drew Stevens follows up with his toughest day, just missed 3 of 6 attempts, end quote. From Grant Paulson of 106.7 The Fan, quote, Jake Moody just went 2 for 6 in this kicking period, 4 straight misses from 44, 49, 51, 55. He's missed 11 kicks in the last 4 practices. Drew Stevens had his worst kicking period as well, 3 for 6 with misses from 39, 51, and 55, end quote. Look, Drew Stevens is far from a lock to win the competition, but what has become quite clear is that Jake Moody has some work to do. He has not done well in these recent practices. Well, the Baltimore Orioles now have lost 4 of their last 5 games. So the O's, during a time in which they need every win that they can get, instead are losing a whole lot. A 9-5 loss at the Minnesota Twins on Monday night in Game 1 of a 3-game series. The O's in MLB's 2026 regular season now are 57-62 with a run differential of -37, and now are 3 games behind the Texas Rangers for the American League's 3rd of 3 wild card spots. The Twins in this regular season now are 59-61 with a run differential of -31, and now are 1.5 games behind the Rangers for the American League's 3rd of 3 wild card spots. So the O's are in the midst of a second consecutive big series in the American League wild card race, but the O's this past weekend lost 2 out of 3 games at the Rangers and now have lost this Game 1 at the Twins. Very disappointing pitching for the O's on Monday night. Their starting pitcher was Trevor Rogers. He had been doing very well, but he lasted for just 4 innings, allowed 2 runs in 4 innings, gave up 4 hits, which were a home run, 2 doubles, and a single, issued 2 walks and 2 hit-by pitches. It did record 4 strikeouts. He threw 79 pitches, 45 strikes, 34 balls. So during O's manager Craig Albernaz's post-game session with reporters late night on Monday night, had this exchange.
What are we seeing from Trevor Rogers tonight?
Yeah, a lot of body counts falling behind. You can tell he wasn't as sharp as he usually is, and the pitch count reflected that, like 81 pitches, I believe, through 4 innings, whatever it was. So it was just, but he kept us in it and did even though not feeling his best, he still gave us a chance.
Yeah, but 2 runs in 4 innings, not good enough. And the Orioles' relief pitching in this 9-5 loss at the Twins on Monday night was terrible. 4 Orioles relievers combined to allow 7 runs in 4 innings. Now, Cam Sanders did toss 2 scoreless innings as he is back. The O's on Monday afternoon announced having recalled Sanders from AAA Norfolk. But Rico Garcia officially allowed 4 runs without recording an out. He in what ended up being a 5-run 7th for the Twins, faced 4 batters and got no outs as he gave up 3 singles and issued a walk. And also during his time in the game was a throwing error by catcher Carlos Narvaez. And Grant Wolfram, he officially allowed 3 runs in 1 2/3 innings. He, to the first batter he faced, gave up a 3-run homer by former Washington Nationals first baseman / outfielder Josh Bell to left center field for a 7-1 Twins lead in that Twins 5-run 7th. And Wolfram in the bottom of the 8th allowed 2 runs. He in the outing gave up 6 hits, which were a home run, a double, and 4 singles. It did have 3 strikeouts versus no walks, and Josh Walker faced 2 batters, issuing a 2-out walk, but then recording a strikeout. But Rico Garcia and Grant Wolfram, they combined to allow 7 runs in 1 2/3 innings. Garcia's ERA for this regular season ballooned to 3.62. Wolfram's ERA for this regular season now is at 5.75. During Craig Albernaz's post-game session with reporters late night on Monday night, had this exchange.
Had a couple of games here lately with bullpens unraveled late. What do Rico Garcia and Grant Wolfram need to do to get back on track?
Yeah, Rico was, just the big play of that inning was the bunt by Austin Martin, and then, tough play for Narvi spinning the no-look throw and going down the line. Then we're forced to play infield in second and third, and Jeffers hits the ball through the infield in, and, Rico, he looked fine out there. Wolfie, it's just the same. He just has to get ahead and throw strikes, and when he's ahead, that's when he's at his best. But when he falls behind, then he has to come back in the strike zone, and it's pretty unforgiving when you have to do that.
All right, and then there was the Orioles offense in this 9-5 loss at the Twins on Monday night. The O's scored 5 runs, which should be good enough to win, although the O's totaled just 7 hits and worked just 1 walk. The 7 hits were a triple, a double, and 5 singles. So the O's did go 4 for 10 with runners in scoring position, but the O's struggled against Twins starting pitcher and former Orioles starting pitcher Dean Kramer, and you just knew that would happen. The O's late night on Friday night, July 31st, announced having traded Kramer to the Twins for outfield prospect Jonardo Reyes. And Kramer, who for the O's was a so-so pitcher, morphed into a Cy Young Award candidate on Monday night in facing the O's. He allowed 1 run in 7 innings with 7 strikeouts versus 1 walk. During Craig Albernaz's postgame session with reporters late night on Monday night, had these exchanges.
Like Dean Kramer's locked in tonight. What was just making him so tough out there?
Yeah, his command was really good today. Like, I think we had, Dustin counted, it was like 5 pitches that were like over the big part of the plate. He did a good job of teasing us the corner, and then a lot of strike the ball stuff, and we couldn't lay off it. But he did a good job with his command, and yeah, he was really good today.
You mentioned pregame that looked like he was doing some new things with the Twins. Did you kind of see that today, or more same from before?
Yeah, he looked like his glove side was higher than it usually was here, and then looked like his release point was higher as well, and threw a lot more four seamers, which we knew coming in. That's what he did his last outing against Kansas City, but he still had the cutter going. The split was still there, and then he flashed a curveball when needed to. So that was a really good outing by Dean.
Were your hitters at bats decent against them, do you think?
Yeah, we squared up a few balls. I mean, we only had 1 walk on the day. Yeah, we couldn't get anything going. Like we said, we either hit it in the air to the big part of the field, or like that was it. Like honestly, like Dean did a really good job of it getting weak contact by us, and we didn't have the answer for it.
No, you did not. Yet another disappointing game for Gunnar Henderson. He is the Orioles starting shortstop and number 1 batter, went 0 for 3 with a walk. Henderson's OPS for this regular season now is at just 675. This is a guy who over his first 4 MLB regular seasons, 2022 through 2025, had an OPS of 831, and his quality of contact in this regular season is way down. Henderson, for this regular season per StatCast via the latest data on Baseball Savant, has a career-low hard hit percentage, just 44.9. Craig Albernaz, during his pregame session with reporters on Monday, got asked about Gunnar Henderson, including continuing to bat him in the number 1 spot. Here were those exchanges.
Line of question. Sorry. Gunnar at leadoff, we've seen him struggle at points this season. He's kind of going through it a little bit right now. What kind of gives you the confidence in him that, like, hey, this guy should be at the top of the lineup? When you watch him right now, what are you seeing that gives you that belief?
Yeah, he's got to go. That's the biggest thing. Like, not many teams have a Gunnar Henderson, and we do. And Gunnar is, been struggling for the results, but the process has been great. But, for us to get where we need to go, Gunnar Henderson has to be Gunnar Henderson. And, we have all the faith in the world. His at-bat quality has been outstanding. He's been getting walks. He's been hitting the ball hard. And now it's just finding some open area on the field. And, so we're going to keep having Gunnar in a leadoff spot because he's a game-changing player.
Putting him down could take some pressure off of him, or would it maybe be some kind of a blow to his confidence? You don't want to really try that.
No, well, I mean, we got 40 games left. There is no confidence, there is no lack of belief. Like, our best players have to go out and play and perform, and we want Gunnar to get as many at-bats as he can.
I tell you, what is happening with Gunnar Henderson is emblematic of this second consecutive disappointing season for the O's. This regression of Gunnar Henderson. Nobody can figure out why it's happening, but it's happening, and it's one of the Orioles' biggest problems. This guy's gone from being an American League MVP candidate to having an OPS in the 600s. 2 offensive bright spots for the O's on Monday night were Kobe Mayo and Jackson Holliday. Kobe Mayo, as the Orioles starting third baseman and number 7 batter, went 2 for 4 with an RBI RBI double and a 2-run single. Mayo for this regular season now has an OPS of 718, but the extent to which he has been hitting for power lately is great. Mayo for the month of July had a slugging percentage of .605. Mayo for this month of August now has a slugging percentage of .708. And Jackson Holliday, he is the Orioles starting second baseman and number 3 batter, went 2 for 4 with 2 singles. So did get thrown out in an attempted steal of second base. But Holliday over the Orioles' last 3 games is 6 for 12 with a home run, 2 doubles, 3 singles, and an intentional walk. He for this regular season now has an OPS of 749. Also, the O's on Monday afternoon announced having option starting pitcher Cade Povich to AAA Norfolk after the 10-5 win at the Texas Rangers on Sunday, a game for which Povich was the Orioles starting pitcher, but he lasted for just 3 innings, allowed 3 runs in 3 innings. Game 2 for the O's at the Twins Tuesday night at 7:40. The O's have listed Brandon Young as their probable starting pitcher for the game. And that'll do it for you and me for now, but there's more to come. Wednesday's show, episode 1385, will include a lot for you on the Washington Commanders. Also on Wednesday's show, I'll talk Washington Nationals and Baltimore Orioles. The Nats are home to the Chicago Cubs Tuesday evening at 6:45 for game 1 of a 3-game series. The O's are at the Minnesota Twins Tuesday night at 7:40 for game 2 of a 3-game series. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll talk to you on Wednesday.
Yeah, I would say the unofficial depth chart is like as valuable as like preseason rankings. Okay, so so strong.